My name is Tyler Shaw, and I'm about to show you how a quiet man's patience can transform into something far more dangerous than rage. The humiliation started small, the way poison always does. Tyler's idea of adventure is trying a new Netflix series, Amanda announced to our dinner companions, her laugh ringing across the restaurant patio. Last week he got genuinely excited about organizing his sock drawer by color. Six faces turned toward me, expecting the good-natured chuckle I always provided. I forced that familiar smile, the one I'd perfected over 3 years of being Amanda's personal entertainment. But something cold was crystallizing in my chest. He's so methodical, she continued, reaching over to squeeze my hand with fake affection. Remember when we went to that concert and he brought earplugs? Not for the volume, for the quality of sound. More laughter. My sweet, cautious man. I watched her perform, noting how her eyes sparkled when she landed a particularly cutting observation. Amanda Holt was beautiful in that commanding way that made people lean in, desperate for her approval. At 31, she possessed an effortless charisma I'd never understand. Her auburn hair caught every light, her smile could disarm anyone, and her laugh was genuinely infectious when it wasn't aimed at me. Tyler almost cried eating mild salsa in Mexico, she said, building toward her grand finale. I'm talking about the stuff they serve at Chipotle. My brave man. The table erupted. Even Jamie, my supposed best friend, was wiping tears from his eyes. I sat there, fork suspended halfway to my mouth, watching my fiancée reduce me to a caricature for the amusement of people I'd considered friends. That night, I pulled her aside in our apartment's kitchen. The dirty dishes from our pre-dinner snack sat stacked by the sink, a small detail that would later seem prophetic of how everything was about to pile up. Amanda, we need to talk. She was already in her pajamas, that silk set I'd bought her for Christmas. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and without her public persona, she looked almost vulnerable. Almost. What's wrong, babe? She opened the refrigerator, pulling out a bottle of wine. You seem tense. You keep putting me down in front of others. My voice was steady, controlled. I'd practiced this conversation in my head during the drive home. If that's your idea of love, this ends here. Amanda paused, wine bottle halfway to the counter. Her eyebrows drew together in that expression of confused innocence she'd mastered. Babe, what are you talking about? The jokes, Amanda. The constant jokes at my expense. I'm not your comedy prop. She set the bottle down with a clink that seemed louder than it should have been. Tyler, come on. It's just humor. Everyone knows I adore you. Then find someone else to joke about. Or stop. I stepped closer, meeting her eyes directly. I'm done being your punchline. For a moment, something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe even respect. But it vanished quickly, replaced by that laugh. Seriously? You're getting upset about some light teasing? Everyone does it. That's what couples do. They share funny stories. Those weren't funny stories. They were character assassinations delivered with a smile. I moved toward the doorway, then turned back. I'm sleeping in the guest room tonight. And tomorrow you decide, respect me or find someone else to entertain your friends. Tyler, wait. I'm serious, Amanda. Dead serious. Change or I walk. I left her standing in the kitchen, wine forgotten, confusion and something that might have been fear written across her face. The next morning brought an unexpected gift. Silence. No mockery over breakfast. No eye-rolling when I mentioned my weekend plans to reorganize the garage. Amanda watched me carefully, as if seeing me for the first time. Over the following weeks, something shifted. The public humiliation stopped. At dinner parties, she actually defended my preferences instead of mocking them. When her sister made a joke about my methodical nature, Amanda shut it down with a sharp look. Tyler's organized because he's responsible, she said. That's not a flaw. I caught her looking at me differently, with what seemed like genuine interest rather than amused tolerance. We had real conversations about books, about travel plans, about the future. For the first time in 3 years, I felt like her partner instead of her pet. A month later, I proposed. We were walking through Riverside Park on a Saturday afternoon, autumn leaves crunching under our feet. I'd carried the ring in my jacket pocket for 2 weeks, waiting for the right moment. Not the perfect Instagram moment Amanda usually craved, but something real. Amanda, I said, stopping beside the old oak tree where we'd had our first real conversation 3 years ago. I love who you've become with me, who we've become together. I dropped to one knee, pulling out the modest solitaire I'd spent weeks selecting. Her hands flew to her mouth, eyes wide with genuine surprise. "Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down her cheeks as she nodded, unable to speak. When she finally found her voice, it was barely a whisper. "Yes. God, yes." The ring slid onto her finger perfectly, and for once, Amanda was speechless. No performance, no audience, just the two of us and the promise of something better. Wedding planning consumed the next 6 months. Amanda threw herself into it with the same intensity she brought to everything else. But now I felt included rather than tolerated. We debated venues, tasted cakes, argued good-naturedly about guest lists. She asked my opinion and actually listened to my answers. "I can't believe I'm marrying you next week," she said the Friday night before her bachelorette party. We were lying in bed, her head on my chest, the moonlight streaming through our bedroom window. "Having second thoughts?" I asked, though I was joking. For the first time since we'd been together, I felt secure. "Never," she said, tilting her head to look at me. "I love you, Tyler Shaw. Really, truly love you." The next morning, she kissed me goodbye before heading out with her bridesmaids. The party was planned for Saturday night at some upscale lounge downtown. Dinner, drinks, whatever else women did at these things. "Have fun," I said, wrapping my arms around her. "And don't forget, I trust you." She smiled, but something in her eyes flickered. Later, I would replay that moment countless times, wondering if I'd seen the truth even then. "I love you," she said, rising on her toes to kiss me once more. "See you tomorrow." I watched her drive away, humming while I planned my own quiet evening. Jamie had offered to throw me a bachelor party, but I'd declined. I preferred solitude to forced celebration, especially after years of being the entertainment. If I'd known what Amanda was planning, I might have chosen differently. Sunday morning arrived with rain and an unexpected phone call. I was drinking coffee and reading the news when my phone buzzed. Kira's name appeared on the screen. My cousin, 2 years younger than me, working as a bartender while she finished her master's in psychology. We weren't close, but she was one of the few family members who'd always treated me with genuine respect. "Tyler, I'm sorry to bother you so early." Something in her voice made me set down my mug. "What's wrong?" I didn't want to get involved, but I saw Amanda last night at the club where I work part-time." My stomach dropped, though I couldn't have explained why. "Okay." "Tyler, she was on some dancer's lap, and it didn't look innocent." "I thought you should know." The words hung in the air between us. I could hear the bar's morning prep in the background, bottles clinking, chairs scraping against floors. "Thanks," I said finally. "Tyler, I'm really sorry. I debated calling all night, but you did the right thing. Thanks, Kira." I hung up and sat in the kitchen silence, rain pattering against the windows. Amanda had texted me around midnight, claiming they'd gotten back to the hotel and everyone was exhausted. She'd included a photo of herself and 3 bridesmaids looking appropriately tired and innocent, but Kira wouldn't lie. More importantly, Kira wouldn't exaggerate. I spent the morning making phone calls. A former client of mine, Marcus, handled security for several downtown venues. I'd helped him with some IT consulting last year, and he owed me a favor. "Marcus, I need surveillance footage from the Velvet Room. Last night, around 11. "Tyler, man, I can't just—" "My fiancée was there for her bachelorette party. I have reason to believe something happened that I need to see." A pause. "You sure you want to go down this road? Sometimes it's better not to know." "I'm sure. Give me 2 hours." Marcus met me at a coffee shop across from his office, sliding a flash drive across the table without ceremony. "The timestamp starts at 10:47 p.m. I'm sorry, brother." I drove home with the drive burning a hole in my pocket. Amanda was still at her spa recovery day with the bridesmaids, another post-bachelorette tradition I'd never heard of but had agreed to fund. I plugged the drive into my laptop and hit play. The footage was clear, taken from multiple angles. At 10:52, I watched my fiancée enter the frame wearing a short black dress and a sash reading "Bride-to-be." The quality was good enough that I could see her face clearly as she laughed with her friends, drinks already in hand. 11:16 p.m., Amanda talking animatedly with a shirtless dancer, her hands gesturing wildly. 11:23 p.m., the same dancer leading her toward the private rooms area. 11:31 p.m., Amanda straddling him on a couch in what was clearly a private booth, her mouth locked onto his. 11:45 p.m., the two of them standing, his hand on her lower back as they moved toward an even more secluded area. But the real devastation came with the audio. The club's security system had picked up her voice clearly when she leaned close to speak to him. "I'm not married yet. Let me have one last ride before I'm tied down forever." I watched the timestamp tick to 12:02 a.m. as they disappeared entirely from camera range. I replayed the sequence 3 times, each viewing making the betrayal feel more surreal. This wasn't a moment of weakness or a drunken mistake. This was calculated, deliberate. The woman who'd promised to love and respect me had turned our wedding into a countdown timer for her freedom. When Amanda returned home Sunday evening, glowing from her spa day and chattering about massage oils and cucumber face masks, I smiled and nodded in all the right places. I asked about her night, and she delivered a perfectly crafted story about dancing with the girls, staying up too late gossiping, and falling asleep exhausted. "We were so good," she said, curling up next to me on the couch. "Just innocent fun. No dancers or anything crazy like that." I kissed the top of her head, inhaling the scent of her shampoo. "I'm glad you had fun." Over the next week, I became someone I'd never been before, a careful, calculating strategist. The wedding was scheduled for Saturday afternoon at the Grand Pavilion, a venue that had cost me, $14,000. Amanda had insisted on the premium package: flowers, photography, videography, open bar, 5-course dinner for 127 guests. But I wanted more than just footage from her bachelorette party. I needed to understand the full scope of her deception. I hired a private investigator named Janet Stone, a former police detective who specialized in marital investigations. Janet was the kind of woman who could disappear into any crowd. Average height, brown hair, forgettable face that became an asset in her profession. "I need everything," I told her during our Tuesday meeting. "Phone records, financial statements, any evidence of prior infidelity. My wedding is Saturday. I need this by Friday." Janet raised an eyebrow. "You're still planning to go through with the ceremony?" In a manner of speaking. Wednesday brought the first revelation. Amanda's phone records showed extensive communication with someone named Derek Green, a coworker from her marketing firm. The texts went back 4 months, starting professional and evolving into something unmistakably intimate. Thursday delivered the financial records. 3 charges to the same downtown hotel over the past 2 months, always during my business trips. Amanda had paid cash each time, but the hotel's records showed Derek Green had booked the rooms. Friday morning, Janet delivered her final report in a manila folder thick enough to choke on. "Tyler, I'm going to be straight with you. This woman has been cheating on you for months. Multiple partners, multiple occasions. The bachelorette party wasn't an aberration, it was a pattern." I flipped through photographs, credit card statements, phone logs. The evidence was overwhelming and methodical. Amanda hadn't just betrayed me. She'd made it a hobby. "What are you going to do?" Janet asked. I closed the folder and met her eyes. "I'm going to get married." Friday night, Amanda kissed me goodnight with the same lips that had been on Derek Green 3 days earlier. She was radiant with excitement, talking about our future, about how perfect tomorrow would be. "I can't wait to be your wife," she whispered in the dark. "Neither can I replied, and meant every word. Saturday dawned clear and crisp, perfect for an October wedding. I woke before Amanda, showering and dressing in the guest room to maintain the tradition of not seeing each other before the ceremony. Through the bathroom window, I watched her bridesmaids arrive in a flurry of hairspray and nervous energy. I drove to the venue separately, arriving 2 hours early to oversee the final details. The Grand Pavilion looked exactly as Amanda had envisioned. Ivory roses and eucalyptus garlands, string lights twinkling overhead, elegant table settings for our 127 guests. Everything perfect for the show we were about to perform. Marcus met me in the venue's tech room, where he'd spent the morning setting up the projection system I'd requested. "You sure about this, Tyler? Once you do this, there's no going back." I tested the wireless clicker in my hand, watching the projection screen descend smoothly behind the altar. "I've been thinking about this all week. There's no other way." By 3 p.m., guests began filtering in. Amanda's parents, Richard and Patricia Holt, elegant in their formal attire and obvious pride. My own parents, looking slightly overwhelmed by the grandeur Amanda had insisted upon. Friends from college, co-workers, extended family, all of them dressed up and expectant. Jamie approached me near the altar, straightening his groomsman's tie. "How you feeling, man? You look calm?" "I'm ready," I said, which was the truth. At 3:30, the music began. Amanda's bridesmaids walked down the aisle in their dusty rose gowns, each carrying a bouquet of white roses. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. The wedding march started, and every guest rose to their feet. Amanda appeared at the back of the aisle, radiant in her designer gown. The dress had cost $3,000. I'd seen the receipt. Her father beamed beside her, preparing to give away his daughter to the man he genuinely believed would cherish her. She was breathtaking. Even knowing what I knew, even planning what I was planning, I felt a stab of loss watching her walk toward me. This could have been real. This could have been everything we dreamed of. Amanda reached the altar, her eyes bright with tears of joy. Her father kissed her cheek and shook my hand with genuine warmth before taking his seat in the front row. "Dearly beloved," the officiant began, "we are gathered here today to celebrate the union of Tyler Shaw and Amanda Holt in holy matrimony." I half listened to the familiar words, focusing instead on Amanda's face. She was glowing, completely absorbed in the moment. Every few seconds, she'd squeeze my hands and smile, whispering, "I love you," when the officiant paused. "Tyler has prepared special vows," the officiant announced, "and has requested to address his bride and the assembled guests before we continue." This wasn't in the original program, but I'd made the arrangement that morning. Amanda looked surprised, but pleased. She always craved moments she could control, and this one, she thought, belonged to her. I stepped forward, taking the wireless microphone the officiant offered. The venue fell silent, except for the soft click of cameras capturing what everyone assumed would be a romantic moment. "Amanda," I began, my voice carrying clearly through the sound system. "Before I say anything else, I want our friends and family to understand exactly who you are." A murmur of approval rippled through the crowd. Amanda beamed, clearly expecting a heartfelt speech about her wonderful qualities. "I'd like to show everyone something that happened last weekend." I clicked the remote. The projection screen descended behind us with a soft mechanical hum. Amanda turned, confusion replacing her smile. The first image appeared. Timestamp 10:52 p.m. Amanda entering the velvet room in her bride-to-be sash. A gasp echoed through the venue. Amanda's face went white. "Tyler, what?" I clicked again. 11:16 p.m. Amanda talking intimately with the shirtless dancer. "This is my fiancée at her bachelorette party," I announced to the horrified crowd. My voice remained steady, conversational. "1 week before our wedding." Click. 11:23 p.m. Amanda being led toward the private area. "Tyler, stop this right now." Amanda lunged for the remote, but I stepped back smoothly. Click. 11:31 p.m. Amanda straddling the dancer, her mouth on his. Screams erupted from the crowd. Richard Holt was on his feet, shouting something I couldn't hear over the chaos. My mother had her hands pressed to her mouth, staring at the screen in shock. But I wasn't finished. I activated the audio, and Amanda's voice filled the venue through the sound system. "I'm not married yet. Let me have one last ride before I'm tied down forever." The silence that followed was deafening. Even the children had stopped rustling in their seats. Amanda stood frozen at the altar, her wedding dress suddenly looking like a costume for a play she no longer understood. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but whether from shame or rage, I couldn't tell. I clicked the remote one final time, and new images appeared. Hotel receipts, text messages, photographs of Amanda with Derek Green at restaurants, at movies, at the hotel where they'd spent 3 afternoons together. "Amanda has been cheating on me for 4 months," I announced to the devastated crowd, "with multiple partners. The bachelorette party wasn't a mistake. It was a pattern." I walked calmly to the gift table, where I'd placed a manila folder that morning. Picking it up, I returned to the center of the altar. "In this folder, you'll find itemized invoices for this wedding," I continued, my voice echoing in the stunned silence. "Venue rental, $14,000. Catering, $18,000. Photography and videography, $6,000. Flowers, $2,500. Music, $1,500. Amanda's dress, $3,000. Total cost, $42,700. I opened the folder, displaying the receipts for all to see. "As of this moment, this wedding is canceled. Amanda, you'll be receiving a lawsuit on Tuesday morning. I'll see you in court." I set the folder on the altar like an offering, unbuttoned my jacket with careful precision, and walked down the aisle. Behind me, chaos erupted. Amanda's sobs, her father shouting, chairs scraping as guests jumped to their feet. I didn't look back. The last thing I heard before the venue doors closed behind me was Amanda screaming my name, her voice breaking with desperation and rage. Tuesday morning arrived with process servers at Amanda's door. I watched from my car across the street as she signed for the papers, her face cycling through confusion, anger, and fear in rapid succession. She was living with her parents now. Her apartment lease had been in both our names, and I'd had her removed the day after the wedding debacle. My attorney, Rebecca Morrison, was a shark in a tailored suit. She specialized in breach of promise cases and had an 87% success rate. More importantly, she understood that this wasn't just about money, it was about consequences. "The evidence is overwhelming," Rebecca said during our Wednesday meeting. "Documented infidelity, financial fraud, she used your joint credit card for hotel rooms with other men, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The wedding footage alone will devastate any jury." Amanda's legal team requested a meeting before formal proceedings began. Her lawyer, Thomas Brennan, was exactly the kind of smooth-talking advocate I'd expected. Expensive suit, practiced sincerity, and a reputation for settling out of court. We met in Rebecca's conference room the following Thursday. Amanda sat beside Brennan, her usual confidence replaced by something approaching panic. She'd lost weight since the wedding, and dark circles rimmed her eyes. "Tyler," Brennan began, "my client deeply regrets her actions. She's prepared to offer a sincere apology and reasonable compensation for the emotional distress this has caused." "How reasonable?" Rebecca asked. $10,000, Brennan replied, "along with a full apology and a commitment to seek counseling." I almost laughed. "She cost me $42,000 in 3 years of my life. 10,000 is what she's spent on hotel rooms with her lovers." Amanda finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Tyler, please, I made terrible mistakes. But I never meant to hurt you like this. We loved each other once." "No," I replied calmly. "You loved having an audience. I was just the most convenient target." Brennan tried a different approach. "Mr. Shaw, pursuing this in court will be expensive and emotionally draining for everyone involved. The media attention alone will ensure that Amanda's behavior becomes a matter of public record," Rebecca finished, "which is exactly what my client wants." The meeting ended without resolution. As we filed out of the conference room, Amanda grabbed my arm. "Tyler, wait, can we talk privately? Just for 5 minutes?" I looked down at her hand on my sleeve, remembering how that touch had once sent electricity through me. Now it felt like nothing. "We have nothing to discuss privately," I said, gently removing her hand. "Everything relevant will be presented in court." The case proceeded to trial 6 weeks later. Judge Patricia Williams presided, a no-nonsense jurist with a reputation for despising frivolous lawsuits and marital deception. The courtroom was packed with reporters, drawn by the viral video footage that had somehow leaked online despite my attempts to keep it private. Rebecca opened with devastating precision, walking the jury through a timeline of Amanda's betrayals. Phone records, credit card statements, hotel receipts, and witness testimony painted a picture of systematic deception that had culminated in the bachelorette party footage. "Ladies and gentlemen," Rebecca told the 12 jurors, "this isn't a case about a woman who made a single mistake. This is about a pattern of calculated deceit that cost my client not only $42,000, but 3 years of his life and his ability to trust." Brennan's defense relied heavily on character assassination and emotional manipulation. He portrayed me as a controlling, emotionally distant fiancé who had driven Amanda to seek comfort elsewhere. "My client made poor choices," he argued. "But those choices were the result of feeling trapped in a relationship with a man who treated her more like a possession than a partner." When Amanda took the stand, she performed beautifully. Tears flowed at precisely the right moments as she described feeling lonely and neglected, claiming that my ultimatum 6 months earlier had made her feel like she was walking on eggshells. "I never stopped loving Tyler," she testified, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. "I just felt so isolated, so taken for granted. The attention from other men made me feel valued again." But Rebecca's cross-examination was surgical. "Miss Holt, you testified that you felt neglected, yet your phone records show that Mr. Shaw called or texted you every day during his business trips, often multiple times. Would you characterize daily contact as neglect?" "Well, no, but..." "You also testified that you felt financially controlled, yet bank records show that Mr. Shaw never questioned your spending, never limited your access to funds, and in fact increased your credit limit twice at your request. Is that accurate?" "Yes, but that's not..." "Miss Holt, let's talk about the hotel charges. You spent a total of $860 on hotel rooms during your affair with Mr. Green." Mr. Shaw was paying the bills for these charges, wasn't he? Yes. So you were using your fiancé's money to fund your infidelity? Amanda's composure finally cracked. I wasn't thinking about the money. I was emotional. I was confused. Confused enough to tell Mr. Green that you loved him, according to these text messages? Confused enough to plan a weekend getaway with him for after your honeymoon? The jury received the case on a Friday afternoon. They deliberated for less than 3 hours. Judge Williams read the verdict with visible satisfaction. In the matter of Shaw versus Holt, the jury finds for the plaintiff on all counts. The defendant is hereby ordered to pay restitution in the amount of $32,100, representing verified wedding expenses, excluding those deemed excessive or unrecoverable. Amanda collapsed into her chair, sobbing. Her parents, who had attended every day of the trial, sat in stony silence. I felt no triumph, only a cold satisfaction that justice had been served. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. I gave a brief statement prepared by Rebecca. I'm grateful that the court system held Miss Holt accountable for her actions. I hope this serves as a reminder that there are consequences for betraying someone's trust. Amanda's family approached me on the courthouse steps. Her father, Richard, looked like he'd aged a decade during the trial. Tyler, he said, his voice breaking, I am so sorry. We raised her better than this. We're completely cutting her off. She won't be welcome in our home. Her mother nodded, tears streaming. We're humiliated. Absolutely humiliated. She's not our daughter anymore. I watched them walk away, leaving Amanda standing alone on the courthouse steps, clutching a box of tissues and staring at the ground. For a moment, I almost felt pity. Almost. Amanda's public destruction was swift and comprehensive. The wedding footage had gone viral, spawning memes, think pieces, and cautionary tales across social media. Local wedding vendors quietly removed her from their preferred client lists. Her employer, citing conduct detrimental to company image, terminated her position. She tried to contact me multiple times in the weeks following the trial. Blocked phone numbers, emails from new accounts, messages passed through mutual friends, all of them variations on the same theme. Desperation, apology, and requests for forgiveness. I ignored them all. 3 months after the trial, she appeared at my front door on a Tuesday evening. I was grading papers for the community college course I'd started teaching, a way to fill the emotional void with something productive. Through the peephole, I could see she'd been crying. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. Tyler, please. I know you hate me, but I'm drowning here. I lost my job. My family won't speak to me. I can't find anywhere to live. I have nothing left. You have exactly what you earned, I replied. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for another chance. I need help. I'm staying in my car, Tyler. I haven't eaten in 2 days. For a moment, I studied her face. The confident, charismatic woman I'd once loved was gone, replaced by someone hollow and desperate. I hope you find a way to survive this, I really do, but it won't be with my help, and it won't be in my life. Goodbye, Amanda. I closed the door and turned the deadbolt. Through the window, I watched her sit in her car for 20 minutes before finally driving away. That was the last time I saw her. 6 months later, Kira called with an update she'd heard through the local gossip network. Amanda had moved to another state, found work at a small marketing firm, and was reportedly in therapy. No word on whether she'd learned anything about accountability or simply figured out how to better hide her deceptions. I hoped for her sake it was the former, but I suspected the latter. A year after the trial, I ran into Derek Green at a coffee shop downtown. He looked embarrassed when he saw me, clearly debating whether to acknowledge my presence or pretend he hadn't noticed. I made the decision for him, walking over to his table. Derek. Tyler. I wanted to reach out after everything happened, but I didn't know what to say. There's nothing to say. You both made your choices. He nodded, staring into his coffee. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I knew she was engaged, and I pursued it anyway. That was wrong. Yes, it was. Did you know? He asked. When you stood up there at the wedding, when you showed those videos, did you know about me too? I knew about everything. Derek shuddered. Christ. The planning that must have taken. The self-control. 3 years of being someone's joke teaches you patience. I left him sitting there, probably wondering if everyone in his life was quietly cataloging his betrayals for future reference. The thought brought me more satisfaction than it should have. Epilogue. The quiet life. 2 years after the wedding that wasn't, I sit in my favorite coffee shop, grading papers and enjoying the anonymity of being just another customer. The barista knows my order. Medium dark roast, no sugar, but not my story. That's exactly how I prefer it. Kira slides into the chair across from me, setting her own coffee on the scarred wooden table. "How are you doing?" she asks. "Good. Really good. And I mean it." The community college teaching position became full-time. I moved to a smaller apartment that feels more like home than anywhere I lived with Amanda. I've started dating again, carefully, slowly, with someone who thinks mocking your partner is cruel rather than clever. "Any regrets?" Kira asks. I consider the question seriously. Do I regret the nuclear option I chose that Saturday afternoon? Do I regret the methodical destruction of Amanda's life? She had 3 years to learn how to respect me, I say finally. I gave her ultimatums, chances, the benefit of the doubt. She chose to keep treating me like her personal entertainment. So no regrets. Through the coffee shop window, I watch couples walking down the sidewalk, holding hands, sharing private jokes that don't come at each other's expense. That used to make me bitter. Now it just makes me hopeful. "You know what I learned?" I tell Kira. "There's a difference between being quiet and being weak." I spent 3 years thinking patience was a virtue. Turns out sometimes the virtuous thing is refusing to be anyone's punchline. Kira raises her cup in a mock toast. To never being the joke again. To never being the joke again, I agree. We sit in comfortable silence, watching the world go by through rain-streaked windows. Somewhere in another state, Amanda is presumably building a new life. Hopefully one that doesn't require turning someone else into entertainment. I don't think about her often anymore, but when I do, I don't wish her harm. I just wish her far away. The cafe door chimes as new customers enter, bringing with them the sound of laughter and conversation. Real laughter, the kind that builds people up instead of tearing them down. I close my laptop, finished with work for the day, and lean back in my chair. For the first time in years, I'm exactly where I want to be. Anonymous, respected, and completely in control of my own story. The wedding may have been canceled, but my life finally began.